Greetings. There is rape and there's getting away with rape. Two different things. Rape, filming the rape and selling the videos, selling the victim services to rich clients, filming the rich clients and then blackmailing them later. Right? Raping, filming, selling the victims many times over many years. That's the crime. But that's only half the story. Crime, getting away with crime. How do they get away with all this? By absolutely confusing the victims, confusing the cops, and confusing the public. Okay, that is what all these satanic rituals are all about. Getting away with ongoing, very profitable rape. So please keep that in mind as you watch this video of my direct eyewitness testimony of the unbelievable sexualized violence that myself and others endured. Please. And the introduction is called Two Masks, One Priest, a Rock Monster / Devil Bird Ritual. So this ritual happened at the beginning of the first grade. I attended Catholic school from grades 1 through 8. I was drugged and taken into a bathroom in the rectory, I presume, and I was sat down. After a while, a priest wearing a monster mask walked into the room and closed the door behind him and just stood there facing me. 6-year-old boy locked in a small room with a monster. I was utterly terrified. The drug must have been affecting me by then, because the monster was real to me. It was not a man in a mask. So the face and head appeared to be made of solid rock, yet still alive, implying a living monster made of rock. Maybe something like the Thing from Marvel Comics, except it was grayish in color, it was hideous, and it was like one large rock, like a living rock with eyes and a mouth, just a mask. But he stood there staring at me, not moving for what seemed like forever. And the longer he stood there, the more the drug took effect, the more and deeper the fear I felt, till it seemed like I was in a completely negative reality. It's really difficult to explain. Total terror, horror, dread, helplessness, etc. I was 6 years old. I have trouble breathing because I'm dying of lung cancer. I'm doing the best I can here. Eventually, the priest began to slowly lift his arms out sideways. They had been under a long black cloak, which covered his front as well as his back, and the cloak slowly began to lift and separate as his arms spread out underneath it. The open cloak slowly exposed a terrifying red devil face with a strange rubbery nose. The devil was floating, in my mind, a couple feet below the rock face. I know now that it was a large red devil mask strapped around the priest's hips, with a hole cut into the mask below the eyes for his member to protrude from in place of the nose. And sounds ridiculous, but this is very common and well-known mask worn by Satanists around the world when they rape children. See the illustrations. Oh, I can show that at the end of this. So the priest was wearing a black robe under the black cloak, so that all I could see were the two masks. The eyes of the devil mask were pure evil to me, staring right into me. The mask was kind of a cross between a classic devil and a bird of prey, kind of a mixture of both. This is also a very common mask worn by Satanists when they rape kids. So I stood there completely powerless, feeling an intensity of dread that cannot really be described in words. Looking first at the terrifying devil bird, then back up at the hideous rock monster face, then back down again, then back up like, what in the hell? I had no idea. My jaw dropped down as I stared slowly up and down at the two masks. So finally, the priest slowly approached me. As he jerked his outstretched arms underneath the cloak, a sort of flapping motion implying that the bird was flying toward me. Somehow I was given the impression that the rock monster, or the rock face monster, which seemed to be floating above the flying devil bird that was coming at me, was the devil bird's protector, that I would be crushed and killed by the rock monster if I did anything to harm or disobey or disrespect the devil. He may have been chanting something to that effect as he slowly approached me. So soon this devil, which was just a mask that he had strapped around his hips, was right in front of my face, staring into my eyes, and then rubbing and bouncing that rubbery nose all around my face. We know what that was all about. And then the nose, the devil's nose, began to grow and get stiff. And as it did, this demon whispered in a sneering, sort of a cartoon voice, the word Pinocchio. He kind of whispered, Pinocchio. It was so bizarre. And I was 6, I was drugged. So my terrified, horrified, drugged, and confused child mind connected that word with the situation I was in, with the story, and interpreted it to mean that if I didn't tell their truth, that everything was okay and this never happened, that I would be turned into a rock boy, just like Pinocchio was a wooden boy. That's the kind of things that went through my mind. So I knew what he meant. So at the time, I had no idea it was a man's penis protruding from the devil mask that was strapped around his hips. How could I know that? How could a 6-year-old kid even guess? So then the devil said to me, this is so embarrassing, in a kind of a hissing sort of voice, he said, now suck the snot from Satan's snout. Something like that. It was almost, and then he laughed as he said it. And then he shoved his penis, which I thought was the devil's nose, into my mouth. I struggled, he hit me, I passed out. He threw cold water on me, in my face, and then he squeezed my head until I thought I was going to be crushed. It really felt like my head was being squeezed inside some kind of clamp. Maybe it was, I don't know. So I associated with the fear I felt with the rock monster crushing me to death, and I stopped resisting. So I did what he told me from then on because I knew on some level he would stop squeezing my head if I obeyed him. So now I had the devil's nose in my mouth and the devil was right in front of my face. So the evil, terrifying eyes of the mask were just a few inches in front of my own eyes, staring right into my soul, moving very slowly, closer to my face, then back a few inches, then closer, then back a few inches, over and over, very slowly. This put me into a very deep, negative, hypnotic trance. It was a trance of complete fear. The depth of fear cannot be described in words. And once I was in that trance, he stopped squeezing my head or loosened the clamp because it was no longer necessary. At that point, finally, he began to tell me what to do and how to do it. I could hear him breathing fast and making strange grunts and moans and sighs, which my little mind interpreted as devil noises. They were evil, terrifying, horrifying. I cannot describe with words the depth of suffering, and there's no word for it, that completely filled my mind and body during that thing. Oh, Christ. Some of the stuff it's so embarrassing to even read it. So after what seemed like forever, he was finally ejaculating, which I had no idea what was going on. I thought the thing was snotting into my mouth. And he was repeating, swallow or I'll kill you, swallow or I'll kill you. And so I did what he said. And I started to rush like I was going to vomit. So he started squeezing my head again hard. And the fear of my head being crushed helped me to stop myself from throwing up. It's not fun remembering all this. So a minute or so later, I was taken to another room and pushed to a table that had a small critter restrained belly up with its ears and legs nailed back to a piece of wood that was flat on the table. It was a rabbit, squirrel, or guinea pig, I'm not sure. There was a knife laying next to it. I was told in a deep, gruff voice by the rock-faced monster to pick up the knife and cut it open. He told me I was a very bad boy, filthy, disgusting, evil, crazy, the worst person who ever lived. I was a little puke boy, and I needed to sacrifice an animal to God Almighty so I wouldn't have to live in hell and burn forever and ever. So he put the knife in my hand and then wrapped his hand around mine so that I was holding the knife. and then commanded me to cut it open. He pointed at the animal and glared at me, and I felt some sort of pressure build up in the back of my head until I began cutting it open. But his hand was guiding mine, wrapped around my hand. So really, we cut it from its throat to its pelvis very slowly as it struggled but could not move, and it squealed very loudly and very horribly. That squeal horrified me, and I felt so overwhelmingly guilty as I was doing this to this little critter that I stopped being me. I stopped being there. I went away. I went away. It's impossible to describe, but the word for this is dissociation. You can look it up. So the devil then pushed my face into the living animal's guts and ordered me to eat shit, you filthy spawn of Satan, and all this other stuff. And he wouldn't let my head go until I chewed and swallowed. The animal made the most horrible sounds imaginable as I chewed on its insides. I wanted to vomit. My body was sort of trying to, but there was no energy left in me by then. It took everything in me just to move my jaw up and down as I gasped for breath with my face inside the guts of this gurgling, quivering, tortured animal. Again, I cannot describe the intensity of suffering and guilt that I felt as a little boy going through this with words. It was psychic torture. Not to mention what was going on with that little critter. During all of this, I was also under the influence of some kind of fear-enhancing drug or drugs. So I must have passed out then. The next thing I remember, the priest was throwing cold water in my face, making me breathe in and out. He wiped my face off, cleaned out my mouth, and shoved himself into me again. And again, the devil's eyes were staring into my eyes again, closer and further, for a very long time. I became completely immobilized with fear and so on. He made me swallow him again. I started getting sick. He squeezed my head again. He hit me several times, told me I was crazy. Everyone will know I'm crazy. And then he gave me something to drink. And that was more drugs, I presume, painkillers and so on and so forth. So after that, any one of them could rape me anytime they wanted to. And from time to time they did. In the school bathroom, in the rectory bathroom, the church bathroom, or the old cow palace that was between the school and church. The priest would sometimes wear the same two masks and do an abbreviated version of the same routine. As soon as I saw any of the masks or other props they used, I would become completely immobilized with fear, almost robot-like, and do whatever he said. Excuse me. So sometimes he told me I was evil, insane, disgusting, and so forth. But other times he told me I was just like Jesus, or I was an archangel healing his pain. He would wear a leper mask over his groin and tell me I was Jesus healing the leper while I was orally healing him. They always talked to me as if I was a little girl. That's another thing I hated. As if they were talking to a little girl, and this was intensely frustrating to me because I wanted to tell them I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. But I get hit and laughed at as soon as I started talking. I was always drugged first, and these were two of the three parish priests, plus many other special guests from time to time. So that's the end of the first grade reading.